I'm Leanne Goh, the Editor-in-Chief of The Star. Today, we're having a roundtable discussion and our topic is building a disruption-ready workforce. What is disruptive technology? It is a process whereby a product or service that starts at the bottom of a market moves up to displace established competitors. How has that impacted the higher education industry? The Malaysian Employers Federation has warned that disruptive technology will lead to more retrenchments, and the World Economic Forum predicts automation will kill 5 million jobs worldwide by 2020, which is just around the corner. So how do we create employable graduate in such a scenario? Perhaps Professor Downs, you would like to share your views on this?
I'll start by saying this was once a disruptive technology. We now use them all the time. Well, in fact, we now use them less because something else has come along. So I think to some extent the idea of disruptive technology, although we talk about it a lot, has always been with us. And recent work in genetics has said that Darwin's idea of the survival of the fittest has actually probably been overtaken now by the survival of the most adaptable. So actually where we come from is what you're trying to produce is graduates who are adaptable, because what they learn today may well be out of date in 5 years' time. Skills that they use immediately after leaving university may be redundant. But there are some essential things that graduates have, including an ability to continue to learn. And continuing to learn and adaptability will be the key to success in the future.
And do they get these skills in school or at university level, or throughout the education from K to
It has
K?
to be throughout the education process. I think there is often a belief in government, not just in Malaysia, we see exactly the same thing in the UK, that the universities somehow will solve the problems that have not been solved further down the education system. And the reality, I think, is that we need a holistic process that from a very early stage brings kids up to think in a different way, more critical thinking in schools, more adaptability.
Yes, Datuk.
Yeah. Let me take off from there. I just came back from a roundtable discussion along the same theme in Dubai last week, and the same words keep coming out again and again. Two words that stays in my mind. One is adaptability, and the other is rapidity, as in being rapid in adapting to changes. How do we deal with the disruption? And we can go back to history. How do mankind deal with when they start domesticating fire and start controlling it? It's very, very disruptive. And I think that the idea of adaptability and being rapid in adapting is a key point. But when we talk about adaptability and rapidity or whatever, we are talking about the learner. But the learner is not just the student. Everyone is a learner. The university itself, as an institution, is a learner. We learn, we adapt rapidly. Everybody should be part and parcel of this great adventure of adapting to rapid changes.
If I could just come in on a point on that. So at Southampton, Southampton campus here, we're offering engineering, and there are basics that don't change. So in terms of what those industries build on and what those disruptive industries build on, the laws of physics, the laws of maths, although we're discovering little bits of new knowledge, they're basically the same. So that's very much what the foundation is. And then you're teaching the students those topics, and then it's about applying them. And that's where what we would do in research-led education is so important, because they're working in their project work, for example, alongside researchers who are very active. That keeps them at the forefront of what's new and often ahead of what industry is doing. And then the skills and the approaches they learn through doing that are then going to hold them in good stead as they move forward to become the leaders of those industry. And that's what we're all about at Southampton, is developing the leaders of the next generations of industry.
I think adaptability is key. I've sort of put it down as an answer to one of the future questions, in fact. But to go back to, you know, when and where this all starts, I think it's absolutely right. What Tony says is, you know, it needs to start right at school and continue throughout the educational continuum. But I suspect that in recent times, in search of reproducibility and reliability in schools and exams, at school, students are taught to be less adaptable, perhaps, and more about memorising things and learning rather than understanding. And the exam format has encouraged that. And I think the job in higher education is to actually take people away from that now and to make them more critical and more adaptable and to question things more so. And I think that's a particular thing in higher education at the moment.
Maybe I can add the perspective of an employer, because when we recruit new staff, we're quite selective, and I think critical thinking, being innovative, being able to solve problems, those are some of the key elements that we look for when we interview potential new staff. But one of the other key things, of course, is being able to communicate effectively. Right? So we try to have a multidiscipline team, and we try to expose our staff to different functions within the company over time, because we look at their journey in our company as also a journey of learning all the time and every day. So I think we embrace disruptive technology because as a company that plays in the real estate space, we always have to be ahead of the curve. We always have to try and find new ways to do new things. And so we're always looking for new solutions and new ways of being able to compete with our other competitors. So this is something that we look for with new employees, and it's something also that we promote internally as a company.
Shall we look at another question? How has disruptive technology impacted traditional fields like law, medicine, science, business, finance, accounting, and construction?
Perhaps I could comment on that. When people talk about the disruptive technologies, they're talking, they think mainly of, say, like Uber or Grab or Airbnb. And if you look at what is disruptive, it's actually the business model. The underlying technology of the business hasn't changed. You still need taxis or cars and drivers for Uber and so on. And so it's actually the business model that's changed, and that's had the impact. So that means when it comes back to looking at the universities, it means that we have to change the way we teach, say, in the business schools, because we need to teach new business models. And so it's really on that side. Moving forward in the future, I was fortunate to be at the recent Kazan and Megatrends conference, and now they're talking about AI. Now that one is really very different, because the first disruptive was really on the business model, on information processing. Now the new one's going to be on the knowledge workers, and that will have an impact, because now people like lawyers and so on may lose some of their jobs in the more routine areas, like maybe conveyancing and things like that.
Yeah.
Well, although the reality is in conveyancing, a lot of it got mechanised a long time ago, and most of it is now not done by fully qualified lawyers. It's done by legal executives who have a much less expensive training and cost less to employ. So it's a bit of both, isn't it?
It is.
We could add. The one that I thought of was in construction, which might be interesting to Kyril. So our quantity surveying and construction management team at University of Reading, Malaysia, have really focused on using building information management systems, all very new, information technology based, and it enables you to do things which previously took hours and hours of work. It gives you probably more accurate and more rapid measurement of building costs and so on. That does look like changing quite a lot of the way the industry will work in the future. And it is incremental. You're still going to build buildings, they'll be made out of roughly the same materials, but some of the old skills will disappear and new skills will come in.
Do you see then that technology is actually enabling you with newer tools that you can use
Can I,
in the teaching?
if I could give an example, actually maybe two areas. So one of the great strengths in Southampton is optoelectronics, and a good example from the past where it's made a massive difference was the development of optical fibres, but particularly the optical amplifier. This is a Southampton development, not widely known, but the optical amplifier boosts the signal going down a fibre. Well, without that, we wouldn't have the internet and the web working today. So it's safe to say that if this development hadn't happened in 1987 in Southampton, we wouldn't have Google, we wouldn't be talking about Uber, we wouldn't be talking about Amazon. So, and if you think how that's impacted the economy, so that's in the past, that's something, many years ago now. If you look forward with things which we're developing today, which are coming out of electronics, photonics, and areas of physics, so the one I'd highlight would be quantum computing and quantum technologies. That offers the potential for potentially guaranteed secure communication, but also potentially for breaking everybody's codes. So if you look at the impact that would have on finance, we're at an early stage of a revolution. A lot of this stuff is speculation at the moment. But if some of this begins to play forward, it's going to create new companies, new industries, and really is going to transform what we do in the future. The computing power that will go with that is going to transform AI. So AI is huge. There's been a recent report in the UK on AI and showing how that can have a huge effect. But if we add in a lot more underlying technology into that, which will increase exponentially the power, I think we're looking at a transformed world in 10, 15 years' time.
But I think you're right, that's enabling,
Yes,
really, isn't it,
enabling,
rather
yeah,
than
rather
being
than
disruptive.
disruptive,
And
yes.
I want to go back to Graham's suggestion of disruptive business models, because in fact I think probably in medicine particularly, it's been disruptive ideas that have changed things very, very differently in the last 15 or 20 years. And the really interesting thing is the disruptive idea is that the patient should be at the centre of healthcare, which sounds really strange, but in the past it's been doctors and nurses who have arranged healthcare models to suit them. And the fact that you're putting the patient at the heart of something and doing everything around a patient's needs has been very disruptive when it's been implemented in the UK. And a lot of health staff do not like that. But we need to now teach our students to adapt to that and to have a sort of new vision of what life's going to be like looking after patients.
I'm a little worried about the nature of the conversation over this whole idea about disruption. My worry is whether we are telling our learners that disruption can exist independently of construction. The idea of disruption must go side by side with constructing, with building. In fact, when we talk about disruptive technology, it is almost always somebody come up with some new thing, and that new technology disrupt others. It must not be at the expense of creativity. 5 years ago, the buzzword was creativity. Today, the buzzword is disruption. But the two must go along side by side. We must tell our learners that there is a difference between disruption and destruction. And it is very dangerous to think of disruption as destroying something and then think of how to rebuild from it. It must begin with some larger idea of constructing something over existing technologies.
I think, I don't disagree with that, but I think the reason why if you like, the discourse of disruptive technology has caught on is that there is a perception, which it's easy to understand, of a division opening up. And we saw this in the UK and Europe to some extent, between so-called elites for whom actually disruptive technology will be a good thing. The ones who survive will do very well, and they'll be very highly skilled, but some of the lower down the scale jobs will disappear. So I think the fear across society as a whole is that it will actually be the less skilled jobs, the less well-paid people who are at the wrong end of disruption. And actually the highly educated, successful are probably going to be the people who know how to innovate, who are adaptable, who therefore actually use these things to their advantage. And you get a widening gap. I think that presents quite significant and challenging social problems.
But I
Well, you
think-
can
I
always
think that
drive a
can be
cab.
answered, though, because the less skilled jobs are being created by companies under the old technologies, and then people have had to take those jobs in order to earn an income. But now with the new technologies, they can have their own businesses. I mean, it's very easy now, and we're encouraging, for example, our designers to start up their own businesses. You don't have to be an expert in the technology. You employ someone to develop an app for yourself. And for example, you could have someone who has a little nasi lemak stall, say at Bukadinda. Now they have an app, and now they can reach all of Malaysia, and everybody can come to that little stall, and they're inundated with customers. So there is a mix. I agree with Tony. There is a great fear that there is the split between the elites and the not so skilled, but the people are skilled. It's the jobs that were not skilled. And what's happening with the new technologies now is that there are new job opportunities for them that they can take advantage of using the technologies, not developing them, because of course that does require a high degree of skill.
That's quite true. But then if you are unskilled, I suppose Uber has given you a job.
Yeah, but not for long. Fairly soon, Uber will be driverless.
Yeah, exactly. True that.
It's a societal challenge. I go back, if you'll forgive me. I think I've been reading the Bruce Springsteen autobiography recently, and he talks about people who grow up, and it's in one of his songs. So, they bring you up to do like your daddy done. And so, yeah, I agree, Graham, people have the potential to be skilled.
Yes.
But there are parts of the country in the UK and in Malaysia and everywhere where essentially there have been unskilled labouring jobs which have provided steady, okay income for families and sustained them. And the fear is that's what disappears. And you've got to get, as my parents-in-law had, luckily for them, I mean, my wife's grandparents were mine workers and mill workers. They had the foresight to make sure their kids stayed at school and went to university. And in their community, they were rare. But that's what has to happen. We have to upskill much more of the population if your vision becomes a reality. I mean, I agree with you.
Sure. No,
but
I understand where you're coming from. Yeah. No, we do. It will be a change, and I think that's the fear. So a lot of the manual jobs probably disappear, and it'll be a different kind of a job. But I think the opportunities are there. It's just that during the period when the technologies are coming in, you're always going to have some people missing out because traditional jobs are going. I mean, I remember when the computer first came in way back, and they said, we better run the world off computers and everybody's going to be out of work. Well, I think we've created more jobs from computers than ever. So, it's hard to know. And I think it would be a very brave person that would say that the new disruptive technologies are actually going to ultimately lead to unemployment, mass unemployment in the long term. I don't think anybody has that knowledge or understanding that can say that for sure.
Well, there have been people predicting that a lot of industries will go bust, will be not relevant anymore. This brings me to this Mega Trends Forum as well. And Joseph Tsai, who is the co-founder and executive vice chairman of the Alibaba Group, he was asked by a participant, now if I would hire 10 people at entry level today, who should I hire? So he said that his daughter asked him this question, Dad, what should I be studying at the university? And he said, statistics and psychology.
Yes, I remember hearing him say.
Yeah, and he said that that's because you need to know how to understand data and have an insight into how the mind works, behavioral patterns and all that in the new era. So, what should tomorrow's workforce study today then?
Easy. Engineering, obviously. Because they'll study all those. I think you're right. I think it's about finding. There are lots of routes. Whether someone studies medicine and then goes into interesting areas, whether someone starts studying statistics or maths, whether they do engineering, whether they come in from humanities, there are lots of ways through. It's about being adaptable and building up skills that will go towards teams. If you look at any of those companies, they're not just about sometimes there's one person's vision, but it's all about a whole set of people who will form a team. So, but I think it does bring out a point which is about numeracy. Talking about statistics is important, and understanding psychology. Well, lots of the breakthroughs there have come by being more quantitative and being more analytical. So it's really disciplines which are going to force clarity of thought, critical approach, understanding based on data, and that could come from medicine, it could come from law, it could come from social science. In my case, I would advocate it coming from engineering, but it's all about what are the enthusiasms of those young people, what's going to take them best, what are they going to most enjoy and get the furthest, and then making sure the education they've got is going to give them those team skills which are going to make them part of productive teams.
Universities looking at making this part of the curriculum, the numeracy, the statistics, the study of human behavior and...
We don't make every student study statistics, although
elements
formally,
of it.
although most degree programs will draw on statistics one way or another. As Peter said, things become more quantitative. I think it's probably the bit where almost every program will expose students, and we make sure it does, is in developing interpersonal skills. My feeling about sort of AI and disruptive technologies and so on is, although it may happen eventually that talking to a computer is every bit as satisfying as talking to my wife, it will be a long, long time, and long after I'm dead, I suspect, that you really get that same kind of intuitive interaction as you get with talking to a human. And it's that which I think the graduates, certainly in the next 20 years, will need. That's the bit that it will be hardest to reproduce. So there are lots of repetitive mechanical things that can be done by machines, but actually achieving that ability to think on your feet, to be very quick, to be empathetic, will be a lot harder. Not impossible, but harder.
Yes, and then there's the design side. The critical side is very important, but the innovation, creativity side is something that even at the Megatrend conference, they all said that computers definitely can't do. And so that one is going to be a long, long time to solve. And so actually the new technologies have opened up a lot of opportunities for us, because we focus mainly on design and the design disciplines, because people need to design the apps. It's not just the programming of the app, it's how you represent it on your phone, how you access things, how you present the information, a lot on the informatics and that. So I see the creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship side as being very, very important as well. And that's what we focus on. We put a lot of emphasis on that in our studies.
I'm sure if you ask that same question, what should I study 5 years ago? If you ask that question again 5 years from now, the answer will be different. Especially in the context of rapid changes, you can expect kids to identify with new things that's happening very, very quickly. I believe that somehow the good old strong liberal education foundation, generalist liberal education foundation, would prepare our young to adapt and face this uncertain future. The future by definition is uncertain, and you need to have strong tools, strong fundamentals for you to learn and unlearn very, very quickly. So if you ask what do you need to study now, it depends on at what level you're talking about. At the level of after graduating, I think kids should go into very clear skills that they are interested in, and the kind of skills that allow you, precisely because you have strong fundamentals, to make changes and to adapt accordingly. And this is why I could see your point about engineering. A lot of students with an engineering kind of a background, or systematic kind of learning, find themselves in the better position to adapt to changes. Why, I don't know. Probably the guys in engineering can explain.
I don't know. I don't think I would observe, though. I think it's probably the psychology literature would bear me out, that people's skills develop over time. And I think it's actually quite tricky to go back and develop that sort of heavy maths understanding. There are things I could do in maths when I was 20 that I would probably struggle to get back into doing today. And so I think there's an element of when you're thinking about what happens educationally, particularly as in the early stages, it's quite good to have a discipline that's going to force you to study it, whether it's statistics or whether it's the intricacies of law or whether it's learning all that biochemistry that fits in a medical degree. Doing something which is, going to really stretch your maths and your analytic abilities at that point is going to be good. And then I agree with you. Then then you can think about developing some of those things later.
But I think the panel's right to emphasise the team working and interpersonal communication skills. And in fact, I think the lack of that has been one of the things that's hindered development. So we tend to work in silos, and if we were to improve those generic skills and get out of the way of working in silos and work more medicine with engineers, etc., with epidemiologists and ecologists, we would make far greater advances. So almost to sort of echo your point, it's perhaps less key to say what should we study this 5 years as to say what generic skills do we need from our degree.
Okay, I suppose instead of looking at disruptive technology as a threat, but more of as an enabler, so students should be taught to embrace the opportunities that it brings. So at EduCity, how are you creating that environment where students see it as a conducive enabler?
I think for us, as we progress in building up EduCity, I think one of the things that we feel is important is the industry-academic relationship. So we try to encourage companies that come to Iskandar Puteri to establish a link with the various universities. That's probably more true for maybe engineering and business. Medicine, of course, also, and design, of course. And so we try to facilitate that relationship. For example, we just set up what we call a co-working space. We call it Iskandar Space, and it's in Medini. It's about 10,000 square feet of space, which we have created to enable a platform to be available for young entrepreneurs, because we realize that there are a lot of young people these days who don't want to have a 9-to-5 fixed job. They want mobility, they want flexibility, they want to chill out with their friends. So we've created that platform where they can come and use a desk for a day or for a week or for a month. And by having that platform, we then create links with industry and with, for instance, Cradle, which is an agency that provides seed funding for new startups. And then we hope to establish relationship with Raffles and Southampton, because if they come up with a new idea, then there could be some research done on that new idea, for instance. Or perhaps it could be a new idea that the university could consider as a potential subject in the future for a future course. So I think it's very important for the students to be as exposed as possible to the real world that they will be entering when they leave the university, and be as employable as possible. So I think that's one of our efforts to try and facilitate that linkage. And of course we provide internships, and we had a very interesting student from Oman who was our intern, and it's quite interesting. They think in a slightly different way, but they're also very, very driven in terms of being very passionate about what they do. So we also learn, right? When we have interns, it's not that we are just trying to share our knowledge with them, but we also learn something from them. So it's been my privilege actually to be the CEO previously of EduCity, because it's been a very interesting learning journey for myself personally. I mean, a good example was when I went to Newcastle, and they don't do cannabis anymore.
Come in on a point you made about having an intern from Oman. I think there's one of the big aspects going forward is internationalization. If you look at successful companies these days, if you're a manufacturing company, if you took an iPhone, I've got mine in my pocket, but you look at what an iPhone is, well, it's The software is designed in the UK by ARM, the processor which it's driven on. The design is done in the US, and we were talking about design earlier. There's manufacturing which is done in China. There's, and then it's marketed around the world. And so I think part of what EduCity does, and this is very important with what EduCity can create, is it can bring in that international dimension. So it's bringing in international companies into the region. It's us bringing in students from all around the world. It's us as institutions. I mean, so Southampton as a UK institution brings with it all its links around the world. So, for example, strong links with NTU in Singapore, where we've got joint centres in photonics. But we're part of the Worldwide Universities Network. That's 23 universities all across the globe. And so that international dimension, I think, is kind of critical to what EduCity is about, whether it's inward and also outward looking.
I think the other thing that EduCity allowed us to do was, we've been around in the UK for 125 years. We have buildings that probably none of them are 125 years old, but some of them are 100 years old. And so in the UK, you're trying to squeeze modern ways of doing things into sometimes quite old buildings, and occasionally you get a new building. When our building on EduCity was being planned, the architect sat down with the students of the university in the UK, the academic staff, the support staff, and talked to them about, what do you like about your university here? What should we try to reproduce? What don't you like? What do you feel is missing? What have you seen elsewhere that works really well? And so we have a more adaptable building, a more user-friendly building than almost any building that we've got in the UK, because it was built for the start of the 21st century going forwards rather than the 20th century. And so that's part of how you actually create an experience for students which looks to the future.
Fully agree with that. That's our opportunity. We haven't built yet, but we're planning, and we have the same view. We can do anything we like because it's a greenfield pasture. I'd just like to comment on Datuk Khairul's comments, because we have benefited greatly from Medini. We work very closely with Medini and the companies, and this has really been very helpful for our students. It's not only just through internships, but we run projects, we have industry speakers coming in, and I think this very close relationship with the industry that the Medini and IIB are bringing in and linking them up with the universities is very, very fruitful. We've got getting a very tight, closely networked infrastructure in place, and it's really fun to be involved in that. And it's a unique feature of EduCity, I think.
I think we've touched on all these skills that students should have. We have mentioned critical thinking skills, communication, problem solving. Now, these I think are very important. What other skills are needed in the fourth industrial revolution? What else do you think kids should be looking at?
Design.
Or acquiring.
I always come back to that, design thinking. Because the other skills, the critical thinking allows you to step out of the box for sure. But a lot of the other skills are related to maybe improving operations or improving processes, but you need to also step out and redesign. So on the research side, you've got to come up with new research ideas, new technologies, which is what these fully research universities do. But then on the other side, if you're applying technologies like our students do, then it's more about coming up with clever ideas, and that's the design side, the design thinking, designing new services, service design and so on. So I think that design thinking is very important, and of course that's another key word that's been going around today. Everybody wants to do sort of design thinking, but I do believe it's very important as well.
I think another thing, and actually Tony mentioned the Bruce Springsteen biography, and one of the things that's clear there is the persistence of the guy. And he makes this point, and there's another interesting biography by Eddie Izzard, which again I read. He talks about stamina. I think actually one of the skills for success is stamina. We have this idea that students can come out of a degree or design an app and become a multi-millionaire. And some of them can. One of ours in Southampton did, created Last.fm, he's got millions now. But that's rare. What it's often going to take to be successful in your life, your personal life or your business life or your social life, it's going to be stamina. And so I think that I would say is a skill that's still critical.
I would put a twist on that. Now, I would say, particularly in medicine, it's resilience. So it's it can be a pretty tough life, and a lot of junior doctors in training in the UK and in Malaysia, and it's a particular problem at the moment in Malaysia. People find it very, very tough. So we're now adapting our curriculum to try and inculcate resilience, ways of coping, a sort of emphasis on the communication skills to include trying to manage upwards and sideways and to work together to cope with the tough life that
I think
that they face.
what I've just heard, unfortunately, is you might be able to develop it, but you can't teach it. You're really talking, in a sense, about character, and I think partly what Peter was saying a few minutes ago is the only way I can think of to do it, which is to facilitate, give opportunities, expose students to things, and then let them run with it. You can't sit them down and you can't teach resilience, you can't teach stamina. You might be able to develop those things if you give students opportunities.
I would use the word grit. You can't teach, yes, but we can create an environment, an outbound school kind of an environment that allows for students to get, into these kind of activities. It's not just, it is characterized, but that's the
Character building.
Perhaps we shouldn't be too nice to them. Maybe that's the problem. We all triumphed through adversity, didn't we, Roger?
Absolutely. But I think you can learn things that will grind you down, wear you down, ways to avoid that, ways to keep yourself stronger, fitter, healthier, happier, and also techniques for dealing with people who are perhaps bullying or demanding more than is reasonable. So I think there are some. I sort of partly agree that some of it is innate and some of us are stronger than others, but I think you can teach ways around it and learn
I
things.
don't necessarily think it's innate, or if it's innate, it's probably innate in a great majority of people. It's developing it, bringing it out rather than
I agree.
only some people have got it.
Sure.
Co-curriculum, healthy lifestyle. The thing that we are most happy about our new campus faces the stadium and the swimming pool, and we really want to build that kind of energetic, active, and the young. They have all the energy, so we need to nurture
be honest,
that.
when I conduct interviews, an important element for me is actually what do they do in their spare time. I always ask that question, especially if somebody is active in sports, or somebody who loves music, or somebody who loves the arts or performing arts. I like those kind of people because I think there's a bit of balance and makes them a more interesting individual as well. And so, the latest recruit we have, she's a diver. So now she's joined our diving team as an example.
And we have a racing car driver.
Yeah?
He actually wins too. He's very good. But the trouble is, he has to split his time between his study and his driving. So we're having to help him and advise him on how to balance it properly. But it's great.
But that is one of those learning experiences for students. The first time I speak to our students on day one, and I stress participation, not just in class, but in everything. Get out and join the clubs, join the societies, be involved. And while your parents may worry, shouldn't you be studying? The answer is no. You need to be a rounded person, and you need to learn how to balance the rest of your life with the demands of your work. And in my experience, the most successful students tend not to be those who spend all their time studying and not doing anything else. It's the ones who've got other interests, who've got another dimension to their lives.
This actually goes back to the start of our conversation about disruptive technology, because what we're now seeing, of course, is a generation who've been brought up with iPhones. They've been brought up effectively plugged in. And I saw a fascinating talk at the OECD Forum in Paris by Susan Greenfield about what is the effect on young people of the continued interaction on social media, the playing games, the little dopamine hits which happen every single time. And the companies that create Facebook, or the company, I shouldn't pick on any one company, but this whole industry knows how that psychology works. That's a theme we've had. So now we've got a generation of students who are so plugged in, they can easily spend their time in this virtual online world. And it goes to Kyril's point and your point, Tony. You want that student who goes out there and does something physical, dives, races cars. That's what you're looking at. So that is a disruptive aspect of technology going back.
Okay, one last question. So, should universities then jump on this bandwagon and embrace disruptive technology into the curriculum and prepare students to face that? Or should academia move slowly as research takes time? Educating is a lifelong learning process. So what's your view on that?
I think we are the ones who create the disruptive technology in the first place. So I think from our perspective, get the students working alongside the researchers, make sure that your staff are all research active, and then I don't see any challenge in that. That is the right thing to do for a university.
Perhaps I can answer from the user viewpoint, because he's creating it and then my students will end up using it. Refer back to Peter's earlier comment that basically there are fundamental principles in any discipline that need to be taught, and they change very slowly over time. And I think the real focus of the university, and we've discussed this and raised it several times during this forum, is one, the basic principles, and two, developing the character, the all-rounded person. I think those are the key things, the lifelong learning. However, we do have to allow our students to at least keep up to date with some of the technology. So we are introducing some into our courses, and also what we do, and it comes back to putting the students out into industry. If they go to work with the companies and have contact with the companies, then the companies themselves will expose the students to it. So from a user's viewpoint, that's the way that I see that we can take advantage of the technology.
That's a kind of symbiotic thing, because we talk a lot about technology transfer out of the universities into the workplace, and we often say that the greatest single feature of technology transfer is on the soles of the feet of our students, because they, as Peter said, they've been working alongside people who are right at the forefront. Yes. And they take those things into the workplace. Quite often they're taking new ideas from their university into the workplace. There's no intellectual property transfer, there's no royalty payments, it's just the kids have learnt it and they want to use it. And that's one of the exciting things, I think. I think the answer to your question, Dr. Leanne, is well, there's no simple answer. Sometimes it's so obvious that we should be using it that we will be early adopters. And at other times you think, well, I don't want my students to be using AI to do something where actually I want them to know how to do it themselves. There may come a time when doing it at the press of a button will be fine, but just at this stage of their development, the way they will get a handle on the basic principles is if they know how to do it themselves. So you have to just think carefully, which ones do we want, which ones shall we wait? It will vary. Some of them are incredibly useful and have obvious applications in education, and we'd be mad not to use them.
So going by a simplistic example would be learning how to drive a manual car before you do it with an automatic car on a daily basis.
Maybe so. I mean, I support what's just been said. I mean, I think for its own sake, it's pointless. And I think we need to reflect to the employers of our graduates, are we producing graduates who are fit for purpose? How could we improve? And we need to reflect back to the students, what's your experience been like? How can we improve that? So some of the small incremental things we've been making have been in turning the teaching and the traditional lecture into a much more interactive format. So using technology like Socrative on the phones to ask questions and to give feedback, etc., has been really, really good. And also moving into much smaller groups and getting students to, learn for themselves, the flipped classroom where they learn the material first and then come in and have an expert facilitate the finer understanding.
I think certain phenomena like internationalization, globalization, technological changes, these are facts. These are realities around us. It is not so much a question of resisting it or rejecting it. It's a question of maneuvering around it, looking for best ways to give us the best advantage and benefits from it. And the choices, we have to make some choices in different settings, to make different decisions that fits into our needs.
Thank you, gentlemen, for a most insightful session. I'm sure our viewers would have enjoyed listening to all of you, as I have been here. So I think whether the technology is disruptive or enabling, it'd be up to us to decide and take it along in our stride. And of course, I think adaptability, rapidity, stamina, design building, and resilience, these are all the skills that we will need to have, empower kids with in the workforce so that they can decide how to treat technology. And with that, I'm Leanne. Thank you.
I learned something new today. 2 people talking about this.